incredibly important issue to our community, the issue of immigration reform. And to start things off, I'd like to introduce the national president of LULAC, Ms. Margaret Moran, all the way from San Antonio, Texas. Please welcome Margaret Moran.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Today, as the government shutdown continues and hundreds of thousands of government employees remain out of work, we hope that Congress will continue negotiations which will result in them putting party politics aside for the good of the American people. Shutting down the government is not a viable option because it creates insecurity in the economy, weakens business, and makes the American people lose confidence in government. This week, despite the government shutdown, LULAC launched its Act-ober Fall Advocacy Days, which included symposiums, congressional visits, and panel discussions. Hundreds of LULAC members from across the country have come to address critical issues in our community, such as education, health care, the Voting Rights Act, and at the forefront, immigration reform. For LULAC, Act-ober is about pressing for action that meets the needs of the Latino community. We're honored to have with us this morning the Honorable Raul Grijalva and fellow Texans, the Honorable Marc Veasey and the Honorable Henry Cuellar. Thank you, Congressman, for your support and friendship to LULAC. To the extent that Congress chooses not to act on these important issues, the American people will have an opportunity to voice their displeasure in the midterm elections. As with the last election, LULAC will make sure that our community is registered and votes on Election Day. Thank you.
We would now like to bring up to the podium Congressman Raul Grijalva, who's been a champion of our community on so many progressive issues. He's in Arizona, right at ground zero for this debate, and has been truly a person who's been a leader of our community, as have the rest of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, who've been so supportive of LULAC and the Latino organizations on the issue of immigration reform. So please help me welcome Congressman Raul Grijalva.
And I want to thank LULAC and Madam President, thank you very much, and for having members here from all over the country. It is important that during this shutdown that the activity of democracy continue. And you being here reminds us that indeed we are a democracy. And one of the urgent points that has to be made, and this shutdown is a good example, immigration reform is another good example, that we have allowed an extremist part of the Republican caucus to basically hold hostage and control the direction of this democracy. Example, the shutdown. If it were to come to the floor and allowed to vote on a clean continuing resolution for the budget, it would pass. If immigration reform, a sane, rational, comprehensive approach to immigration were to come to the floor, the odds are it would pass. And so the ask today, for me and for many of us, let democracy work its will. Speaker, let democracy work its will. You're in the leadership post not just to take care of an extreme branch of your caucus, you're in a leadership role to take care of this nation. And two of the huge domestic issues facing us is our budget, the budget cuts, the shutdown that's going on, and the lockout of our employees, and the effect that's going to have on the economy. And looming over us is the debt ceiling debate, which again will send this country into an economic spin downward. So that is a huge domestic issue for this nation. And I think the priority domestic issue is immigration reform. We cannot continue on a path of division. We cannot continue on a path of marginalizing 11 million plus people in this country because of their status, of their legal status. We have an opportunity. Leadership is proposing legislation, democratic leadership. It needs to be supported and respected. Some of us have promoted what we consider an ideal immigration reform bill. The deals with all the aspects that we've heard and all the complaints that we heard regarding some of the things in the Senate. And we'll continue to put that down as a marker for people to say these are the values that we've stood for a long time, and we want them included in the discussion. Having said all that, immigration reform needs to be our priority. October is an essential month, and as I was telling Madam President, it is so good that LULAC is here, because this is not a this is a shutdown of an extreme branch of this Republican Party that have locked out the American people from its government. But this is not a shutdown or a lockout of our democracy. Thank you for being here to practice and exercise our rights as Americans, and to LULAC for being at the forefront of this immigration reform from day one, never taking a step back, and insisting that this Congress do its job. Mr. Boehner, Speaker Boehner, let the American people, through their representative, work its will. Let us have a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. What's remarkable about this debate has been just how much the American people support our cause. Poll after poll now is showing the vast majority of Americans, even Republican Americans, are supporting comprehensive immigration reform. And that's because we've been able to build a broad coalition of allies and supporters. And part of that coalition includes reaching out to folks who are outside the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. It's my pleasure now to introduce Congressman Marc Veasey from North Texas area of Texas. He's been doing a great job of standing up for our community on this issue. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Marc Veasey. I represent the 33rd Congressional District, representing Fort Worth, where we reside, my wife and I, and our 7-year-old son, Arlington, and the city of Dallas. And before I go into my comments, I would like to congratulate President Moran on her re-election, because that was an awesome re-election. Yeah. And she's doing a great job. She's doing a great job nationally, and want to congratulate her. She's from a great area in San Antonio with so many wonderful leaders. I know that Henry represents part of San Antonio, as well as Pete Gallego and our dear friend Joaquin Castro. And you know, the time is now. The time is now for us to come together and build coalitions and do what's right for the country on so many issues, like the one that we're dealing with now. We're keeping our government open, and the upcoming battle that we're going to have to deal with the debt ceiling, but also the very important issue of comprehensive immigration reform. Enough is enough. The time for change is now. The time for action is now. Because when you talk about Latino values, when you talk about faith, family, love of the country, those same values that are so important in the Latino community are also American values. The Hispanic American dream, the hope of a better, more prosperous future, is the American dream. As we continue to celebrate the contributions of Latinos during Hispanic Heritage Month, I am honored to stand here with LULAC, the oldest and most widely respected civil rights organization in the country. And I'm especially excited to stand before you today, not only as a longtime supporter of the idea of comprehensive immigration reform, but now also a co-sponsor of the original H.R. 15, the Border Security, Economic Opportunity, and Immigration Modernization Act. This landmark legislation was introduced in the House yesterday by my friend and freshman Joe Garcia, and I could not be more proud to support it. The bill filed is nearly identical with some changes to the comprehensive immigration reform bill that was already passed. The time to fix our broken immigration system is long overdue, and I think that's something that everyone knows. Our country, our economy desperately needs the expansion that comprehensive immigration reform will bring, and our hearts and the country's heart is begging to bring 11 million people that are ready to be citizens, that are ready to contribute to our country and continue to make our country great and strong out of the shadows. It's something that the country can no longer afford to wait on. It's the right thing to do, both logically and morally, and I will do everything I can to make sure that that happens. I'm very happy again, having established a great relationship with President Moran, and very happy to say that I will stand with LULAC all the way to make sure that we do everything we can to pass a comprehensive comprehensive immigration reform. When you think about comprehensive immigration reform, it is truly the civil rights issue of the day, particularly with so many of our young people engaged and involved in this process. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. It's important that we address this issue as one of the fastest growing ethnic groups in the country. 52.5 million strong Hispanic citizens and people that are here trying to make our country better. It's important that we continue to press forward on this dream, on this idea that we can have comprehensive immigration reform. So I'm very proud to stand here today with my colleagues, with LULAC, and I pledge to do everything that I can to proudly represent the citizens in the 33rd Congressional District in Fort Worth, Arlington, and Dallas, and do everything that I possibly can to make sure that the dream of comprehensive immigration reform, and that dream includes more jobs, it includes a better economy, it includes a brighter future for our children, that take place. Thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Now for a wonderful speaker, or the next speaker, represents an area of the border that has been able to deal with immigration in a way that we think is the right way to handle immigration reform. And Congressman Cuellar has been a leader on the immigration front for many years. Hailing from Laredo, he's experienced immigration firsthand, and he knows both how to fix our laws to make them better, and he also knows how to make sure that we have humane laws and ones that respect the hard work of immigrant workers throughout the country. So please help me welcome Congressman Cuellar from Laredo, Texas.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that kind introduction, and I certainly want to thank my colleagues, Mark and of course Raul and the other folks that have worked so hard to pass immigration reform. But first of all, let me say something about LULAC. You know, in every society you need an entity, a group that will fight for the values and the right things. And especially in our society, in our Hispanic society, we're talking about education and civil rights. And this is what LULAC has done for so many years. And that's why we have so many good changes here in this country, is because of leaders like Madam President Moran and the other LULAC. I think we ought to give LULAC a big hand for all the work they've done for so many years on this. Let me, first of all, let me just talk quickly about the shutdown. I know we hear about immigration, but I have to say this, the shutdown. Look, we need to pass, I'm in the appropriations, and our two basic responsibilities in Congress is to pass a budget and appropriations, the appropriations on time, and pay our bills on time. Point blank, that's what we're supposed to be doing. But unfortunately, some extreme parts are using this as a leverage point to get things done. They don't like the health care. The health care law was passed by Congress. It was signed by the president. It was by the most should I say, conservative Supreme Court, declared it constitutional. There was a presidential election where in the presidential election, Mitt Romney came in and said, we're going to repeal, not replace, but we're going to repeal not the Mitt Romney law that he had in Massachusetts, but the other one that he was talking about, and he lost the election. So the democracy, the way our democracy rules is the majority decides for the democracy. In this case, they're using the shutdown as leverage. Imagine this. What would happen if we give in? The next time they're going to say, you know what? I don't like the 1965 Civil Rights Act. Why don't we go ahead and delay parts of it because I don't like that? I mean, imagine if we had a Republican president, a Democratic Congress, and we said one of these days, you know what, we're going to shut down the government unless we pass immigration reform. No, I'm not. But you know what I'm saying is we cannot use the shutdown of government to leverage somebody out. We just can't do that. We got to let the majority rule, and this is what's happened in our democracy. So again, like Raul and Mark, we're all for a clean, let's pass the budget, and then we can talk about some of the changes. I'll be the first one to say I voted for the health care law, but I'll be the first one to say there are some things that we do need to modify and change. I'll be the first one. The problem up here in Washington is you got some folks on the right say repeal the whole thing, and some other folks on the right on the left saying don't change one single word. They're both wrong. We need to sit down. These are the good things to work, and then modify some of the other changes. But that's a different time, a different place to do that fight. Now let's go ahead and talk about immigration reform. Listen, immigration reform is personal to me. My father and my parents, they came in from Guerrero, Tamaulipas. My father became a legal resident, then became a naturalized citizen. So I understand the way this process works. I live on the border. I understand the border. I find it interesting sometimes folks from the northern part of the United States will come in and say, you know, I spend 2 hours there on the border, so I understand the border. Look, the border is a dynamic place. It is a dynamic place where people live there. And they work and they want to have the same things that we are having up here in Washington. And they want to have a legal system, an immigration system that's fair. We all want a fair system. It should have three parts. One, sensible border security, where you provide a sensible border security, number one. Number two, a guest worker plan that works, that's efficient. You know, the jobs that Americans don't want to do, and I represent a lot of the ag jobs. Anybody that doesn't want to do those jobs, give it to the Americans first, and if somebody doesn't want to do it, let somebody else that would do that job. That will help our economy. And the third thing is, of course, the second tied into that is tech, the visas itself. Why is it that we graduate so many foreign students and then we send them back to their country so they can go and compete against us? And if you look at it, in Texas, about 65, over 50% of the graduate of the high-tech STEM areas are foreign students. We want our students to go there, but right now you got a lot of foreign students. Why are we going to let them go out and then compete against them? And then the third thing is, what do we do about the 11 or 12 million undocumented aliens? We're not going to close our eyes and say that doesn't exist. They're here, and we got to find a way to address the issue about the 11 or 12 million undocumented persons that we have here. So we need to have an immigration reform, number one. Number two, keep in mind, and this is why I'm so happy LULAC is doing this, the biggest enemy we have right now in immigration reform, you know what it is? It is time. It is the calendar. Syria came up, if you recall. Now we got the appropriations, a shutdown. Pretty soon we'll be talking about the debt ceiling. Something else is going to come in. When are we going to find the right time? We lost the opportunity in 2009. The 2012 elections came in. The 2010 elections came in. The 2014 elections. If we close this window right now, I'm telling you, we're not going to talk about this to 2017. This is why we got to do immigration reform, and this is why you got to make sure that LULAC keeps pushing like they've done for so many years to make sure that we do immigration reform. Finally, last point, tied into this, because when I think about LULAC, I think about one topic, education. Education is the greatest equalizer that we have in our society, and this is why the DREAM Act and other parts are so important, so all students will get a good education, and all students will be able to move up and say, I am a productive resident citizen of this United States, and this is how we're going to make our country strong, is to make sure that everybody gets a good education. And that is why LULAC has been fighting so hard for so many years for immigration reform, for education, and now of course we're talking about immigration reform and of course civil rights. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you, Madam President.
No questions?
Hey, go Spurs. I'm sorry, I forgot. Go Spurs.
Go Spurs. Thank you, Congressman. For our final speaker, I want to bring up our newly elected Vice President for the Midwest, Darrell Morin, who represents the entire Midwest section of our country and has been working hard to address this issue with the leaders in his area. So please help me welcome Darrell Morin.
Buenos dias a todos. How are we doing today?
Good, Darrell.
Wonderful. My name is Darrell Morin, and Brent, thank you for that kind introduction. I serve as the LULAC National VP for the Midwest. Before we get started, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our Madam President, Margaret Moran, for all of her efforts to really push this forward. It was through her leadership that LULAC councils across the United States have held over 60 press conferences and town hall meetings to help get the true facts out on the issues surrounding immigration reform. I also want to thank the distinguished gentlemen and representatives behind us who've been leading the fight, putting country first to make sure that what's right for the country actually happens, that we put in place common sense immigration reform that not only meets the security and economic needs of our country, but our needs for humanity as well. So can we give them a round of applause for that, please?
I don't think so.
You know, there's been much debate around this issue. And there should be debate. Any democracy benefits from intelligent debate. But I think we can all agree that there's been an uglier side of this issue that has come out. from the remarks of Representative Stephen King of Iowa, who compared dreamers, students who came to this country for no fault of their own as little children, to drug mules. To the former DOT official out of the state of Wisconsin, who posted publicly on Facebook that when he looks into the eyes of the undocumented, he sees Satan. To the sale of a bumper sticker that across the top says, illegal alien hunting permit, no bag limit. I think we can all agree we're better than this, and that our country is better than this. And that's why LULAC's been working so hard to spread the truth about the need for comprehensive immigration reform. At first we heard from the critics of the bill that it was too expensive, that our economy, our country at this point in time could not afford to pass comprehensive immigration reform. Then the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office did an analysis on the bill that passed in the Senate, S 744. Not only did they find it would not cost the American taxpayer, they found that it would create jobs, it would stimulate the economy, and over the first 10 years, reduce the federal deficit by $192 billion. In the second 10 years, an additional $700 billion. So in a 20-year span, we could reduce the federal deficit by nearly $1 trillion. Yet I still watch on TV today people saying it's too expensive, we can't afford to do it. Then we go to those and we hear from those who say, well, that bill 744 didn't do anything to address border security. In spite of the 42,000 Border Patrol agents it mandates and funds be placed on the U.S.-Mexican border. That's over 21 agents for every mile of the U.S.-Mexican border. And they say nothing of the 700 miles of border fencing that has to be put in place. If you equate that to the total length of the border, that's an additional 36% of the entire border between the United States and Mexico. And this is nothing of the billions of dollars that it requires to be spent on military equipment such as drones, fixed-wing aircraft, and all. So ladies and gentlemen, here we are in October. And it's time that we ask ourselves, if they said it was too expensive, and that's not true. If they said it does nothing to secure our border, and that's not true, it's time we finally ask the question for those who are not supporting this. What is the real reason why you're not supporting comprehensive immigration reform? So I want to thank all of you for coming out this morning. And let me just say, God bless all of you, God bless LULAC, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. Before we open up for questions, I just wanted to reiterate what our national president has already told you today, that we have around 150 advocates coming in for our advocacy days throughout this week, and we'll be meeting with members of Congress. And immigration reform, while we talked about that at this press conference, is not the only issue we're discussing. We're talking about education as a priority for our community. We're talking about full equality for the citizens of Puerto Rico, and many of our Puerto Rican members are here with us. They're going to be talking about their special situation and why they're not allowed to vote for members in the Senate and in Congress and for the President. And we're going to be talking about issues such as the shutdown and how impactful that is and how it hurts our communities across the country. And finally, we're going to be talking about the need to address health care in America. No community benefits more from the Affordable Care Act coming online just 2 days ago than the Latino community, because we have the largest number of uninsured Americans. So these issues are priority issues. We'll be talking to over 75 members of Congress today about these key issues. So we're continuing this great tradition of LULAC, standing up for what's right for our community. And we believe strongly in American exceptionalism. We've heard a lot of rhetoric about this over the last year, but we believe if we have an exceptional country, which LULAC supports, and we have exceptional leaders, that they can bring these issues to the table, and they can have an up or down vote on these issues, and they can do the right thing. So now we'll open up for questions to all of our speakers about immigration reform. We'd be happy to answer any questions.